Good afternoon. It is my honor and pleasure to be introducing our featured speakers today, Justice Sonia Sotomayor and Professor Melissa Murray. I can sense the excitement in this room, and I personally cannot express to you just how very excited I am for this next portion of the convention's programming. Because not only do we get to listen to two amazing legal minds talking about issues at the core of ACS and of our nation, we get to do it while eating. Life is good. Jokes aside, it really is an honor for me, a woman of color and a student of law, to be introducing two outstanding women, and unbeknownst to them, two of my personal role models. First is our featured speaker, Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Someone who needs no introduction, Justice Sotomayor has brought to the Supreme Court bench a refreshingly honest and realistic perspective on how the law affects people. Born and raised in the housing projects of the Bronx, Justice Sotomayor's path to success, defined in part by the obstacles she overcame, is one that has resonated with immigrant families and marginalized communities across America. And through Princeton and Yale Law School to the federal bench, her story, captured so beautifully in My Beloved World, is one full of humility and gratitude for the mentors and role models in her life that helped her navigate a path of unfamiliarities. And in an elegant turn of destiny, Justice Sotomayor has now become the mentor, a role model for an entire generation of young people who are inspired to do good and create a better America. Joining her today is Professor Melissa Murray, who clerked for Justice Sotomayor in 2003 to 2004 when the justice served on the Second Circuit. A professor of law for 14 years and interim dean of Berkeley Law from May 2016 to June 2017, Professor Murray has spent much of her academic career shining a light on the intersection of criminal law and family law, and their roles in articulating the legal parameters of intimate life. Professor Murray is also a member of the ACS Board of Directors and has been instrumental in highlighting the fact that we need to do more to encourage students of color and first-generation law students to consider clerkships. We had the pleasure of actually hosting Professor Murray as a visiting professor at NYU Law this past year, and we're overjoyed to see her at some of our NYU ACS chapter events. In the words of Justice Sotomayor, "You cannot value dreams according to the odds of their coming true. The real value is in stirring within us the will to aspire." Thank you both for helping us and so many young people in America see ourselves in you and begin to aspire. So, without further ado, please help me in welcoming to the stage Professor Melissa Murray and Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Let's move the furniture?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. Okay.
I don't like being this far away from you. Hello.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
So what's this? You have a new accessory.
I do. It's going to be around for a little while.
So what happened?
In the middle of the night, I went to get a bottle of water from my living room kitchen area. It was dark, and I tripped over a piece of furniture. Broke it in 4 spots, my shoulder, had to have it replaced, and so I am now partly bionic woman. I need an ID to go through airports.
I don't think you need an ID to go through airports. I think you're good. I think you're good.
Well, you know, I do travel abroad occasionally.
Are you taking care of yourself?
Yes. You sound dubious.
Well, we're worried about you. Are we worried about her? Yeah, we're worried about you.
You know, I'm healing exceedingly well.
Okay.
Both my doctor and my therapist are delighted. The only negative consequence of this is not being able to sleep well. So I'm sleeping in a rented recliner because laying down causes me pain, as it does with most people who have shoulder or upper body operations. But at any rate, so I'm a little bit tired most of the time, but you get used to it.
I have 2 children. You do get used to it. You get used to it. That's true. All right, so a couple of ground rules before we start. The justice cannot talk about anything that is currently pending before the court or anything that the court has previously decided, which is fine because the court has actually not done anything interesting this week that we would want to talk about. So that's fine.
Wait till next week.
Next week.
We got 2 weeks to go.
2 weeks to go.
2 weeks to go.
Okay. All right, so it's 2018. You have been on the court for 9 years. You have been in the federal judiciary for 25, 6 as a district court judge, 11 as a circuit court judge, and now 9 as a justice of the Supreme Court. How does it feel?
Like I'm old.
You look the same.
Well, that's a good thing, you know that? My nephews and niece told my brother the other day that they didn't understand why he was the younger brother since I looked younger than him.
The shade.
I gave them such big hugs and kisses, you know. It is strange to think so much time has passed and that I've done so much in judging during that time. Each experience has been unique unto itself. Each has been valuable unto itself, and each is decidedly different. Yes, many judges will tell you judging is judging, but it's a different kind of judging on each level. And I am so grateful that I've had the opportunity as a Supreme Court justice to know what the other 2 experiences are like, and to understand both the power of each position and its limitations. And I think that makes me, I hope it makes me more respectful of what the judges below me are experiencing and why they may see things differently than we do. And I think some of my opinions have reflected that, have reflected my understanding of what the judges were looking at and the whys of why they were acting.
Yeah.
So it's been a marvelous experience for me. I often have said in the past that I wish I had been a judge before I was a litigator.
It's hard to do that.
I know. But I've often thought of all the mistakes I made as a lawyer and how much better I would have been if I had really understood what judges were looking at. And I'm grateful now that I had those experiences as a justice.
That's how I feel about being a law professor. I wish I could go back to law school because I would kill law school. I'd be so good at it. I would be great.
I think you did all right.
I'd be great at it.
Yeah, you did okay.
So you're settling in. You're like, you're in the groove. You've welcomed new colleagues. You came to the court after Justice Ginsburg famously was alone on the court from 2005 to 2009, and she was just at NYU this last year, and she described that period of time between 2005 when Justice O'Connor retired to 2009 when you arrived on the court as a period where it was just her and 8 very well-fed men.
That's quintessential.
It needs to be on a tote bag. It needs to be on a bag.
It really needs to be.
And then Justice Kagan joined. And so now there are 3 women on the court. And interestingly, the dynamics changed a little bit. So Tanya Jacoby, who is a law professor at Northwestern, along with her student, Dylan Schweers, just released a study a few years ago, and they tracked the number of interruptions in oral arguments at the court. And they found that women justices are disproportionately interrupted at higher rates than their male colleagues, by their male colleagues, and by male advocates. Have you noticed that?
I'm sorry. That was truly spontaneous. Is there a woman in the room who's ever failed to notice that? You know, Justice Ginsburg once noticed, and I hope she has noticed my response to it at an earlier time, where she said she's often spoken at conference, said something, no one reacts to it, and then we go around the room giving explanations, and a male colleague says exactly the same thing, and all of a sudden there's this perking up of, this is the most brilliant thing anybody's ever said. That happens routinely,
Yes.
not just with her, but with all of us.
Yes.
But one of the things is, when I started noticing that, I've been very conscious of saying, when it comes to my turn, Ruth just said that.
Good.
Or noting it so people don't forget that it was her observation to begin with. But that sort of existence is, I think, endemic in our life interactions generally. I give credit to the Chief Justice. I don't know what that study would show this past year or since the publication of that article, but I have noticed him being more of a referee during argument. He's been very conscious, as people are being cut off, of stepping in, much more than he ever had been before, of stepping in and saying, answer that question, but go back to Justice Ginsburg or Justice Sotomayor's question. And I think that it sensitized him. So for those professors who believe their writings have no meaning, occasionally they do. But I think that is reflective of the fact that talking about the difference in gender treatment is important.
Yeah.
Because it's not always conscious. And people don't always do it understanding what they're doing. And if you don't sensitize them to it, they're not going to be able to be responsive in a different way. And so I was grateful for the article. I think it changed some of the dynamics on the court. I've actually had male justices apologize for interrupting, which never happened before. So it's not only him, but others who have been more cautious as a result.
Do you feel the weight of being the only woman of color on the court?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. How so?
Well, I think that there are, and for women in general, the need for role models, and the best and the foremost is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Sandra Day O'Connor as well. They were my inspiration. But for women of color, people in top positions are not as frequent, and certainly not as numerous. And so, as one of my friends reminded me during my confirmation process, she looked at me and she said, "This is not about you, dummy." I was complaining about the process. And she said, "This is about my daughter, who needs to see somebody like herself be in a position of power." And so it is a really big burden. And when I thought about how to fulfill it, what I realized is what I could give them, the only thing I could give them, is being myself. To continue trying to be as genuine as I could with the world, not just with them, but with the world. And so, to the extent that I speak frankly in my decisions and directly, it's because I want people to understand what I'm saying, not in legal terms, but in legal terms that touch the heart. I want people to understand the consequences of law and how it affects them, and the things that we need to do to make the laws better. So for me, yes, it's a great responsibility.
Well, it's not just the consequences of law, but the consequences of language. And one of your first opinions for the court in 2009, you made a very purposeful choice to use the term undocumented immigrant as opposed to illegal immigrant or illegal alien. And you spoke later and said that that was a choice that you made because you wanted to disrupt the idea that being undocumented was an extreme form of criminality. And you wanted to sort of think about the range of criminality. People break laws all the time. And it's not associated.
I give examples of that. How many people take things from their office home that they're not that they're giving to their kids, that they're giving to their kids to paint with or do whatever they need for a school project? Most people do that reflectively without thinking. You're stealing from your employer. Yet we don't think of it as culpable conduct that should result, thankfully, in the death penalty, okay? Or even perhaps incarceration. And so there are varying degrees and varying difference for why people commit crimes. That's no less true for undocumented aliens. Certainly there's a significant, not even a significant, there's a number of people who have committed other criminal activities that are not related to their status. That's a different undocumented alien than the undocumented alien who's here without valid papers, but is still a contributing member of our society. And responses have to be as nuanced as the punishment judges give. But so do people's perceptions of those individuals. You know, many people think you've committed a crime, you somehow are a horrible, bad person. The reality is that good people do bad things. And how many of you mothers in the room or fathers look at your kids when they say, "Do you still love me?" And you say, "I love you, I just don't like what you did." That's not a, you know, that's a perfect truth. And there may be moments you don't like them, but you know. But my point still remains that as a society, unless we as judges are careful about our use of words and not taking on words with this large emotional negative impact about others, then we won't teach the greater society to be more nuanced in their reaction to very complex problems.
But that seems to be a problem now more than ever, this need for nuance and precision as opposed to sort of blunt language. I mean, do you think that that decision is more resonant today than it was in 2009?
Well, given the nature of the conversation today, yes. And I think people are still having it, and I'm grateful for it. One of my colleagues wrote a decision a number of years after mine, pointing out rightly that the statute that these people are charged with violating deems them illegal aliens. But I think that misses the point, which is the fact that others use a term doesn't mean that the term has not been imbued with more meaning than what the statute gives it or than what the dictionary might give it. That sensitivity has to be more broad than that.
So I'm going to shift gears. That was really heavy, and it took a dark turn. It took a very dark turn.
All right, can I go talk to them now?
Well, so I was going to say, I know you want to mosh a little bit. And
Yeah,
you want to
I
go
like walking
out
around. Because of this, hugs are a little tough right now. All right, one-sided hugs, okay? On this side. All right, I'm going to walk around.
She's going into the crowd. I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to take that. I'm just going to stay here.
All right, I'm going to walk around.
I'll just stay here.
Hello,
Good.
you guys. How are you? I can't give out two hands anymore. Hello. Hi. All right.
Part 4, you sent in Utah v. Strive. It's one of the most moving things I've ever read.
Oh,
It's an honor to meet you.
thank you.
Will you sign this?
I can't right now. I have a hard time. Thank you. Hi. Go ahead, Melissa. You can do it.
Can I come?
You can come. You can ask the next
I didn't know
question,
if I
too.
just stay.
Whichever way you want to do
I'm
this.
coming too.
Go ahead. Hello. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right. I'm just the hype man.
Hello. Hello. All right, what's your next question?
Oh, we're gonna do it like this?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
gonna
we're
let
do
you
it like
work
that.
some more.
Okay.
I'm gonna let you go to work.
This is like Oprah. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
So have you seen the new documentary, RBG?
Oh my gosh, did I love it.
Did you love it?
My whole chambers went last Friday night. We had the best time. I am shamelessly promoting it, okay? It is hysterically funny, informative, and just plain entertaining. It's a beautifully done piece. It's very short, but nobody should miss it.
No, so it's fantastic. What was your favorite part?
Oh, that's an interesting question. You mean when they showed my picture and Elena Kagan's? No.
Those were good parts.
No. I'm just jesting about that. I think it was seeing Justice Ginsburg laugh so much.
She's like,
You know, she can appear stern, and because she's so slight, she really doesn't project her smile as broadly as I might project mine. And even as a colleague, we deal with some fairly serious things.
yeah.
And she's not a joster by personality,
Really?
but she really did do some singers, and she does some great ones, you know. The day that President Obama came to greet us at Justice Kagan's swearing in, he asked her how she felt about her new sisters, and her response was, "I love them, but I'll be happier when you give me 5 or 6 others, okay?" 5 others. So she can do it, but it's not a constant in her personality. And throughout the film, you saw her taking true pleasure
Yeah.
in moments of her life.
Well, with her granddaughter, it was lovely
very,
to see her with her
very
granddaughter.
touching.
So the part that really shook me was her workout, because I really felt like I needed to step up my own game when I saw her
I need
workout.
to step
We
mine.
all do.
We all do.
do. Do you have a workout like that?
Not like that.
Not like that.
Yeah, I do work out. I have a trainer too.
But do you have a trainer? I mean, her trainer, like, she was like pulling, like, I think she was pushing a tire or something. It was like crazy stuff.
Crazy stuff. She really, you know, she's religious about it. She does more push-ups than I ever could.
Well, she was doing a
life.
one-arm push-up. It was like Jack Palance in City Slickers.
No.
It was a lot.
She's quite amazing. She's
So-
really amazing.
So
But
do you
all of the female justices have workouts. It's interesting that each of us are more careful about that than some of our male colleagues.
Terry Stewart from the California Appellate Division over here.
Hello, Terry. How are you?
My wife loved your book.
Thank you. Thank you for reading it.
There's someone over here who had the book. Who over here? There's the book. Has everyone read the
Would
book?
you grab that?
Yes?
When I get to something, I'll sit down with it.
We'll come back to you with the book.
Yes.
Don't worry. We'll get back to the
I
book.
just can't do it standing up now with this arm. I'm trying.
So there are a lot of students here who are currently in law school and they're thinking about clerking. How many of you are thinking about clerking? Hands raised. Oh, lots of them.
Lots and lots of them.
You once told me that your biggest regret was not clerking.
It still is.
Why didn't you clerk?
I was stupid
I don't think that's true.
and not thoughtful. Jose Cabranes, who you know was my mentor, he's currently a judge on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, but he was general counsel and VP at Yale at the time, and he was my mentor.
Yeah.
And he was trying his darndest to tell me to go clerk. And he was trying to explain all the advantages. And all I saw about clerking was that they spent all of their time in the library, research and writing.
Yeah.
That's the only part of it that I understood. And after 7 very challenging academic years of my life, I did not want to do that. I wanted to get out there and be a lawyer. And I was going to the DA's office. Bob Morgenthau promised me I'd get into the courtroom within my first 6 months. I was trying a case within my first month.
That's exciting.
It was, and I had a wonderful experience there. But it wasn't until I became a judge that I understood that clerking was a lot more than that.
Yes.
It is not only the relationship with your colleagues, because even when you're working on a case in a firm or in an institution with other lawyers, they're all sort of doing different things or different parts of it. But in clerking, you're constantly talking to your co-clerks and learning from them. And you're learning what moves judges. And you get to see in a year more papers, more briefs, more approaches on how to practice law than you will in 10, 15, 20 years of practice.
Yeah.
Because every matter before you is different.
Yeah.
And so you're learning not just the processes of the court, but how to practice in a different way. And eventually, I think everyone who clerks comes away understanding what is important in convincing judges of your argument. And that's hard to do if you've never clerked for a judge. You know, it's a little bit embarrassing for me to say that I regret anything professionally. I'm a sitting justice.
It seems like you're living your best life.
Yes, I am.
Like, yeah.
But I made an uninformed decision. You know, I came from a very poor background. I had not a whole lot of debt compared to what you guys have today, but debt. And I thought I had to get out there and work. And I was wrong. By clerking, I would have advanced my career by 5 to 10 years. And I tell every minority and every person who's in law school, it's the best choice you can make for yourself. And take it as a year that will promote your career and advance you 5 to 10 years. So it's worth the sacrifice. And don't forget that most law firms give you a bonus at the end of the year. So they make up for it a little bit, okay?
Well, so I will say, when I clerked for you, it was the most challenging year of my life. I came to work on weekends for a long time, but it was about being part of a family. I became really good friends with my co-clerks. We still see each other, and I think those are the benefits of clerking that people don't really appreciate, that it is part of being part of a bigger family, not just with your judge, but with your co-clerks as well. And here's my former student, Isha, who is your clerk as well.
As my clerk as well. So I had to call her over to give her a hug.
The Supreme Court Justice, not only did she have the distinction of being my former boss, she also married me and my husband. She officiated our wedding.
If you haven't figured out, of picking law clerks.
She does a good job of picking law clerks. And her law clerks love her. So truly, if you are a student thinking about clerking, it is an amazing experience. It's part of a pipeline to a career, whether it's in practice or being a judge. This is something you don't want to shut yourself off from. So please, please consider it. And please work with ACS. Like, we are really interested in getting more students, and certainly first-generation students and underrepresented students, into the pipeline as well. So please think about that. So Justice, we've got to get to the other side of the room.
I will, but one footnote. I will move faster now. One footnote to that. You no longer have to clerk right out of the law school.
That's true.
And many, many judges, especially I know, in fact, the Southern District of New York, love people who come from other places.
Yes.
And so if you haven't done what you needed to do in law school to be a clerk, do it in practice. Figure out those people who are connected to judges you might want to work with.
So right here is my research assistant, Caitlin.
Hello, Caitlin.
Caitlin is going to Cravath
She's a shameless promoter. You should be happy about that.
Caitlin is going to Cravath and then clerking for Victor Bolden, so she's doing exactly that.
Very smart.
Oh,
as are you.
It's so nice to meet you.
Thank you. You picked a good mentor.
I did.
Hello.
Cheryl Harris.
How are you?
So we have to ask more questions. Like, I'm having a hard time. This is really testing my powers of chewing gum and walking at the same time. This is a lot.
You can go back. I've gotten used to this.
I know I'm utterly superfluous here. So now that you've gotten some new colleagues, what's
Yes.
that like? What's it like when a new person comes to the
You know,
court?
it does change the dynamic. Everybody has their own personality, their own sense of humor, and it takes a while. It takes a while to get used to people's humor. I remember the first day Justice Gorsuch was in conference, and he said something, and I realized he was joking.
It was hard to tell.
Oh, no. He intended it to be. But I could see in my colleagues' faces, it wasn't sort of a humor that we were accustomed to. And we got used to it, and he got used to us. And so things fall less flat now. But no. I don't. How are you?
How you doing? Fine. You doing okay?
He's been trying to get me healthy for years. He's trying to get me to meditate, and I have the books. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. You know something? That's probably true. Oh, okay. Maybe I should show up for that. No. I'm only joking about that. The reality is that each voice is different.
Yeah.
How you respond to it. How best to convince another human being, you have to learn.
Yeah.
You have to learn what's important to each person. You have to figure out how to approach a problem with them in a way that's more persuasive to them because you're sensitive to their viewpoints. And that takes time.
Yeah.
And so, I, to my law clerks, when I'm annotating things, will say, okay, what do we think Justice Gorsuch would do? Because I know him the least. And as time goes on, I don't need to ask that question as much.
How do you get to know them? Do you hang out? Do you go to happy hour?
We don't have a habit. Well, we have lunch after every oral argument, and we have lunch after every cert review and case review conference on Friday. So I actually see them socially at lunchtime more than I have any other set of judges in my 25-year history. Because when you're a district court judge, you might have a judge's lunchroom, but not everybody shows up regularly.
Right.
When you're on the circuit court, you're having two other judges with you, and maybe you have lunch with them occasionally, but certainly not regularly. Mm-hmm. And so this is more forced socialization than I ever thought I wanted.
Forced socialization.
I'm halfway jesting about that, but it is true. It was Sandra Day O'Connor who really insisted on all of the justices actively participating in going to lunch with each other. It is very, very hard, and it tests our fortitude to, at the end of a very emotional announcement of a case where we have been divided, there is a protocol, which is we force ourselves to go to lunch.
Yeah.
Because it forces us to remember that we might differ in what our answer is to a societal issue, to a constitutional issue. But we are still people who are working together.
And breaking bread.
And breaking bread and understanding that differences are not something that should permanently alienate you, but something that you should work on understanding each other better with and figuring out what you can do in the future.
Now, where are you going?
I'm going over here.
Okay, so I'm...
This is another law club.
I know, Brian. I'm part of the
Matt's
family.
sitting up there. I missed him.
Oh, he's up there.
Matt, I'll get back to you before I go up.
So, when you're with your colleagues, I mean, like you're forming these relationships with them. It's taking time. Like, do you feel like you're settled in with them? Like you know them really well?
Well,
are you getting to know them? Are they friends like your friends on the Second Circuit?
That's a lot of questions packed into
It's a lot of walking. It's a lot of walking.
Compound questions, counselor. let me try to unpackage it. We talk a lot about our families and about kids and about spouses, and for those who have relatives still living, parents, etc. We talk about those things.
Yeah.
So we know about each other in very personal ways. We know each other's hardships. You know, when Justice Ginsburg's husband Marty was dying, that was my first year on the bench. Justice Breyer sent her a package of food every night.
Aw.
Because Marty was the cook in the family.
Yeah.
And he was afraid she wasn't going to eat. That's a very family-like gesture,
Yeah.
which repeats itself. If one of us is sick, like I was with my shoulder, everybody called me. What are you doing here? How are you? Where's Karen?
Texas, she's so sorry.
Ah, tell her I missed her, okay.
It's like a family, people.
Yes.
The clerkship family.
Spouse of a clerk.
You like the spouses more, we know.
Yes.
I know.
I love her husband.
We know.
Yeah.
You've made that very clear.
Josh. Thank you. Anyway, there are very close gestures, and when
Yeah.
I broke my arm, every one of my colleagues was sending a note, calling, following up to make sure I was okay.
Yeah.
And this is very traditional.
Yeah.
Do you really know what's in a person's heart? That's a harder one to answer. I think it's easier when you're on the courts below because you're not working on all the same cases, and you can vent to a colleague who's not on a panel about a different panel and what they did and how you think they were right or wrong. A little harder when you're on our court because you sort of know what the lineup is. Who's in the majority, who's dissenting, you know who agrees, who doesn't. Complaining to them is useless because they have their own complaints.
Yeah.
And so it's a sort of different type of relationship in that regard. But we do socialize outside of the courthouse, not too often because we're all busy in our own lives, but we do things together. Justices have been in my home, I've been in theirs. We've celebrated.
Do you play charades, like Pictionary?
No,
Twister?
we don't do that.
No?
No, we don't do
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Anyway, but.
No game night?
No game nights,
Okay.
none of that. But there were movie nights. Sandra Day O'Connor used to take them to Western movies.
Western movies?
That was her
like
love.
What, like Unforgiven?
Yeah, things like that.
Okay. Okay.
But she liked the really old stuff.
Like True Grit?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
that was
okay.
her favorite. But, you know, it is a family, which means that you're upset with them sometimes.
Sometimes.
A lot. You can disagree a lot.
Sometimes.
And you can forgive a lot. And you end up being forced to. Thank you. Thanks for what you do.
Justice McKay conveys your greeting.
Tell her I love her, and I'll send my hug.
I will.
All right. Okay, Matt, you got to come out this way. Wait a minute. There he is. Anyway, in those ways, it is much closer than people imagine. So
we made it back.
we made it back.
We made it back. You ready?
All right. You can go back. I'll let you go back to script now.
I'm sweating.
I made it through the room.
You did.
I did.
I was just bobbing along in your wake like a barnacle. So my kids love you, right? So
I love them.
so I have two kids. They love her. I got called out once because my daughter went to school, and her teacher was reading from a book. So can we have the first book slide? So this is the book her teacher was reading from. Sonia Sotomayor, A Judge Grows in the Bronx. And it was kindergarten. And so my daughter raises her hand and says, I know her. And the teacher says, sure. And then they keep reading the story, and my daughter says, she brought me a unicorn. And the teacher says, right. And then I get a call that night about my daughter's imagination. And how we gotta rein this in and direct it to more productive avenues. And I'm like, well, this is entirely true. She does know Sonia Sotomayor, and she did give her a unicorn.
You should disclose to the audience that your daughter is smarter than you, me, and her dad put together.
She's smarter.
This child.
I'm just glad she's taking care of us at some point.
Yeah, right? So am I.
I mean, she may be plotting our destruction, but she's ultimately going to take care of us.
The story has duplicated itself recently with the 6-year-old child of a friend. They were doing the same thing in class, and she raised her hand and said, I know Sonia. And they didn't believe her. Her mother has begged me to go in and meet the class and show them I know Lucy. It's taught me a lesson. We better remember to take pictures now so the kids
You have to be seen to be believed.
That may be true, actually.
Pictures or it didn't happen.
Yes.
All right, so this is a good segue. There's a cottage industry of Sonia Sotomayor children's books. So I know Justice Ginsburg has the whole notorious RBG thing, and I mean, they're like the Bajancy. I don't want to cross them. I don't. But you have an equally vociferous group of children's book authors who are totally standing for you. So there's that one slide of Sonia Sotomayor, the judge, but then there's this one. Who is Sonia Sotomayor? It is a question I've asked on many occasions. Who is Sonia Sotomayor? My daughter loves this book. She knows everything in this book. This is when she asked you, tell me all about the time you chased down counterfeiters with 1,345 Fendi bags.
I know. She
was
read
really
that
into
line
it.
in
She
my
was
book.
really into that book. So this is one of them. And then there's another one. I am Sonia Sotomayor. My son, it's a graphic novel. And you're a cartoon character.
I haven't seen that one yet.
He loves it. It's like, and this is how my son got literate, reading these books. So you go on all kinds of capers. It's like a comic book.
Oh,
he
I
loves
like
it.
that. I
He
have
really
to pick it up.
He likes this one a lot. And then there's another one. This one is just like, it's like Sonia's, it seems like very staid and respectable. This one's in the school library, right? So this one,
I have not seen either.
There are a number of them that you haven't seen. There's so many of them. This is just a fraction of the ones I could find. There are a ton of them. So the next one.
Would you like to hear my mother's story? Someone told her, you should know how many hits on the internet there are for your daughter. My mother, who didn't ever touch a computer, decided to go to the local library and ask the librarian what a hit was on the internet.
It could go in many directions.
The librarian put my name in, and popped up countless hits. And my mother called me that night and said, I stayed for about 2 hours and I fell asleep after reading. And I said, that's what I would do too.
She's so proud of you, though.
Oh, no, she is.
She's so proud of you.
But these things do sort of shake me a little bit.
Well, this one shakes me. So go back to this last one.
Okay.
Where you're surfing on a gavel.
They could have, do you think that's surfing or salsa dancing?
I don't know. I mean, either it looks unsafe. It looks like safety is not a priority here.
Well, as you can tell from my breaks, it might not be for me either.
This is not for the children, because I could see the children doing it. What's the next one? This is my favorite. So Condoleezza Rice, Nancy Pelosi, Sonia Sotomayor, Michelle Obama, all fighting crime together in the female force. It's amazing. It's amazing.
You know that my first dream was being a detective like Nancy Drew.
Condoleezza looks like she's solving a crime right here. I mean, I want to read this book. Are you interested in it?
I am. Get a copy and send it to me.
We're going to get this one. Okay, then there's this next one. So this is your book.
This will be my book.
So it's a book of, tell me about this book.
It is a picture book for children between the ages of 3 and 8. It's probably sophisticated enough so most parents will have to read it with their children rather than a child reading it themselves. It's a story of my life, but through what I consider the greatest influence on my life, which was reading. I learned about the world through reading. Given where I grew up, which many people know was an economically challenged neighborhood, I've spoken frequently about the fact that my mom would have Reader's Digest in our home, and I would read about all these new books coming out, and I would go to the local library and try to check out the book, and my library never had them. I didn't realize that a local library in sort of the poor neighborhood of the Bronx wasn't going to have recent books. So, but reading is what exposed me to the world and the possibilities of the world. I talk to kids all the time and tell them that that's the value of learning. It's not getting good grades, it's not satisfying your parents, it's not being competitive about whether you get an A, B, or C. It's about what learning teaches you exists that you wouldn't otherwise be exposed to. It opens up the possibilities. And so, this book is about that.
Yeah.
I suffice by saying that I start the first vignette with talking about my grandmother reciting poetry at our family parties. Another vignette is about my diagnosis of diabetes, my condition, and the fact that reading comic books and Supergirl gave me the strength to figure out how to give myself insulin shots.
Yeah.
So the Constitution's in it, the Bible's in it, Lord of the Flies, which was really important in shaping my view about the importance of laws and the importance of how those values have to be nurtured in children, that we're not born with them. That is something that we have to teach. That came to me through Lord of the Flies, but there are other readings and books and episodes that describe moments in my life through how reading opened the world to me. And so the end of the book is, so this was the puzzle of my life. Where are you going?
Oh,
Okay.
that's like a choose your own adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I like
So,
that. So we saw a number of My Beloved Worlds out there in the audience, and it's a book mostly aimed
Hold on, where are
at-
those books? I'm sitting down, I can sign them
We
now.
didn't steal them. We're going to give them back. We're going
I
to sign
know.
them.
But I need a pen.
Do you have a pen? So you've actually created one for junior readers, so more a middle school audience. So
Yes.
this is the new My Beloved World that's coming out. So you can purchase this for the young people in your lives. But it's basically sort of
And a bridge version.
a bridge version of
A few
your
more pictures.
more pictures.
More pictures, different pictures, some the same, but more new ones. And simplified for a middle-age group. Middle school group, not middle-age group.
Depends.
Boy, was that a Freudian slip.
I know I feel exposed. I've got to add, so these are two new books, and you're on the court, and you're recovering from shoulder surgery, and like, what am I doing with my life? Like, how do you have all this time? Like, how are you doing this?
One of the partners in one of my law firms one day said, there's plenty of hours in a day between 12 at night and 8 in the morning. No, he was halfway jesting, by the way. But that is a joke. A lot of it is that these are acts of love. And the middle school book was started because my cousin, Miriam, who's described in the adult book, and maybe one of my favorite people in the whole world, is a middle school bilingual education teacher.
Yeah.
And she begged me for a middle school book. And so that was born from that. Random House, who's the main publisher, came to me and said, once I was doing the middle school book, shouldn't I have a young person's reader of some sort? And so that's where that idea came from. And they also wanted me to do a second junior children's book, which is going to come out a year from now. And, yeah.
You're turning into Beverly Cleary.
But that one, when they approached me about a second children's book, I told them on one condition, that you accept a book that's totally my idea. And they did. And when I say totally, a picture book about my life is, pretty standard idea. But I wanted a picture book about kids with special, I don't want to use the word, with life challenges, chronic conditions.
Yeah.
Mind, juvenile diabetes, attention deficit, autism, all of the common deafness, blindness, all of the common challenges, some visible and not so visible, that kids grow up in the world experiencing. And I wanted a children's book that would explain some of those challenges, some of the frustrations, some of the difficulties in dealing with such conditions, but also some of the strength that it gives you. And so that book is set in a garden, and it's about a bunch of us kids working on creating the beauty of a garden, each with a different scent, with a different function, with a different need. Some plants require more water, some more sun. Others do great in the shade, some don't. And through that metaphor, trying to get kids to understand that we build this world together, and that they should participate in understanding what each other is dealing with. So they agreed to it, and that's actually the book I've been working on with the help of friends, because we've had a lot of friends, some of them in this room, who have been looking over the manuscript and making comments, and we've had a lot of experts working with us.
That's great. That's great.
So
That's
that was
great.
important. Hold on. Who is the young woman who gave me the hard copy? Where is she? Tell me your name. Spell. Y-E.
Y-E-S-S. I-C-A. C-A.
Okay, thank you.
So your family in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's been on my mind lately because we're going into hurricane season again. Last hurricane season was absolutely devastating for Puerto Rico, both with Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria. And I think the death toll in Puerto Rico is staggering. Just shy of 5,000 people lost. How is your family doing in Puerto Rico? And have you been back to the island?
I have not been. I was scheduled to go back in May, literally the week I was having my operation, so I had to cancel it. I had wanted to go back earlier, but with all of the challenges on the island, the marshals were not happy having me come visit. It was difficult to drive through the island. It's still not easy, but it was more difficult before. It's gotten every day, every month gets a little bit better. But just this week, a dear friend of mine sent me some packages of coffee. And it reminded me that we had a very robust coffee industry that's now been destroyed for at least 7 years, if not 10 to 15, because all of the coffee plants were uprooted, and it takes 7 years for them to take hold again. So an entire industry was just wiped out.
Yeah.
And most of my relatives over time got water and electricity, but only last month did the last of them actually get both.
Yeah.
And the island has roving blackouts continuously. Supplies are still limited. The challenges are great. The recovery is not something that's going to go away in a day, a month, a year. This is going to take decades for the island to rebuild. And needless to say, for many, it's challenging. For most, it's sad, because a place that they've lived in and had grown comfortable in has now is now presenting a daily life survival challenge for most people. It is heartbreaking. Thankfully, most of my family has been well. They've suffered financially and continue to do so. Thankfully, they have relatives in the States, and so we've been able to help. Some people don't have as many or the resources for help. But I think what is troubling so many is the brain drain that's going on in Puerto Rico. Most of the graduates from the University of Puerto Rico are not staying on the island. They're coming to the States. And you can't blame them, because their future on the island is really questionable.
Yeah.
Whether they will be able to practice whatever they've learned or make a living and support themselves or help their families. So I don't make judgments about the people who leave. I just worry about it. And the population of Puerto Rico was exceeding 4 million just 5-10 years ago. It's now down to 3 million. And I'm predicting it will go down even further as a result of these storms.
What can we do to help Puerto Rico?
We still need contributions. Thank you. The island, certainly, I can't do fundraising, so it's you guys who could do that if you choose. But their Habitat for the Humanities has projects on the island, and they're helping to rebuild homes. There are sections of the island that are still not accessible. The people in the mountains and on the other side of the electric grid are still without power in many areas. So many homes have been destroyed. Any sort of resources that can be shared, both human and material, are still greatly needed and appreciated on the island.
Yeah.
But I think there's still work that can be done here in the States.
Yeah.
And many schools, for example, I know for a fact that NYU and others have opened the schools to some of the graduates in Puerto Rico whose facilities were closed down during the storm. So there are different ways that you can participate. And just get on the internet. There are so many different projects going on.
I think things that ACS can probably do as well.
Well,
collectively.
there are a lot of problems with, like what happened after September 11th in New York. There's a lot of resources available to people if they know how to access them.
Right.
And there's just a great deal of difficulty in dealing with red tape, especially that's related to our government here on the mainland. And so there are still some resources that are available to islanders, but they're not able to get to them.
Right. We are almost at the conclusion of our time. So I want to just say one last thing. We've been talking a lot about inclusive courthouses, clerkships, and recently there's been a proposal from some of your colleagues to modify the clerkship hiring process so that it's not quite as accelerated as it's been in the past few years. So the proposal would require clerkship applicants to apply after the conclusion of their second year, so they would have 2 years of grades, and that there be a sort of cooling off period after interviews where no offers are extended, and then offers can be extended after that open season, and that there can be no exploding offers. Have you thought about that? Do you think it's a good idea? I mean, we've tried to reform the clerkship hiring process before, and it's kind of fallen apart. Do you think this will take?
I really hope so. I hope so because it's hard to imagine in a profession in which we're supposed to be teaching civil discourse, courtesy, respect, and human tolerance. The idea that judges couldn't follow a plan voluntarily undermines the lessons we're supposed to try to teach. It's hard for me to understand how the old plans fell apart. This one has a chance for success. I see some judges who have been very actively working on it here. I know that I, for one, am going to pay very, very close attention to the clerk applicants I get from judges. And I will raise not just an eyebrow, but react accordingly to judges who are not following the plan. Mm-hmm. I'm one of the justices who if I'm not the last justice to hire in the clerkship cycle, I'm really close. The professors here can tell me. I think for the following September, I may be one of the justices who hires last. And I don't think I've done badly.
You've done okay.
There is more talent out there than we as judges could ever pluck and use. And it seems to me to send a very poor message when we can't act civilly towards each other. And so for me, that plan and its success is very important to upholding our professional standards.
Well, so on that note, let me say this. I don't think I've ever said this to you publicly, but I want to say it now. When I applied to you in 2000, I was a first year, I just finished my first year. I think I had 1 grade because Yale didn't have grades in the first semester, and then no one turned in their grades, so I only had this 1 grade. I was not the most exciting candidate, and you took a chance on me. And I will just say that when you took a chance on me, it changed my career forever. I would not have had the career that I've had without your support and mentorship. And I am so grateful that you took me under your wing. I'm so proud to have been your clerk. I am so proud to be part of your clerkship family. And I want for other students like me, first-generation students, to have the opportunity to work for someone as committed to justice, as committed to making this country achieve the promise that it was built on. I want that for everyone because that's what you gave to me, and I'm so grateful for it, and I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
I know. I didn't take much of a risk. Thank you.
You are truly a national treasure. We want nothing more than to see you be on this court for another 30 years. So please take care of your shoulder.
I'm going to try. Bye-bye.